I want to welcome everybody here. Welcome to all of our guests. Thank you for being here. Beautiful day outside. On behalf of the Pro Football Hall of Fame and the Board of Directors of the Pro Football Hall of Fame Luncheon Club, I call to order the 20th meeting of the 61st year of the Pro Football Hall of Fame Luncheon Club. Our invocation today, followed by Pledge of Allegiance, will be given by Pastor Walter Moss from the Father's House. Pastor.
Amen. I'm thankful for the opportunity to pray today. You know, in the midst of all that's going on in our nation and in the nations of the world, we're also going to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, for Israel, and for our families. We're thankful today to be here, and so I'm asking you to bow your head with me at this time. Father, thank you for the privilege of being here today. We thank you, Lord, for the meal that we partaked and the blessings that you blessed us with. Thank you for our neighbors, and thank you for teaching us to love our neighbors as ourselves. Bless this time, this gathering, our speaker, our community, and we do lift you up, and we do thank you for your greatness and your goodness to all of us and to all of mankind, and we bless you. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, I pray. Amen. Amen. And now we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor.
You're welcome.
Please silence your cell phone. Unfortunately, we had some sad news to report. We had a death. Dan Cooley's wife, who sits usually at this table over here, passed away. So we ask that you keep Dan and his family in your thoughts and prayers. I want to introduce the folks here at the head table. Obviously, you heard from Pastor Moss. Welcome. Sitting with our clergy this month is one of our board trustees, Becky Richard. To my left, and your right, our speaker today, which you'll hear from, and what a fascinating story. I had a few minutes there to spend with him and talk. Alan Farst. And next to Alan is his brother, and that's Brad Farst. Brad, thanks for being here. I want to recognize our sponsors. Those are the folks that help us do what we do and bring in our speakers. The Wilkshire Golf Course. Dr. Peter Ferguson, chiropractor. Liberty Ford. The Marion Motley Memorial Fund Scholarship. And Aultcare Primetime Health Plan. For those of you, and this is open to anybody as a member, if you are interested in introducing a speaker from time to time, if you know the person or a big fan and want to come up, let RJ know. We're always looking for folks that want to introduce our speakers. So it doesn't have to be a board member, or it doesn't have to be, anybody like that, but if you want to introduce one of the speakers, let us know. You're welcome to do that. All club announcements are on the Facebook page. Okay, so if you want to go there, put that as, mark it as one of your favorites. All the announcements will be on there as well. This is kind of a selfish plug for me. As you know, I'm the president of the Better Business Bureau, but we have our annual Shred Day, and a lot of you have asked about that. And the Shred Day for the Better Business Bureau is going to be on Saturday, April 20th, 9 a.m. to 1 at Canton Central Catholic High School. So if you have legal documents or any kind of documents that you want shred, electronics, they recycle some electronics. If you have questions about that, just call our local Better Business Bureau. So it's a great event, and it's well received in the community. Also, our next meeting at the Hall of Fame, and someone was asking me about this, will be March 18th. Okay, that'll be our next time at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and that is with Bernie Kosar, who's going to be our speaker at that time. All right. Now it's time to draw the ticket. I didn't forget this week. $180, and see Ozzy back there. All right, the winning number, 236 356. $180, and there's Mark Vander down here. Got a winner right down here, Oz. Right here, Oz. Mark's buying next week. Unfortunately, next week, our speakers were forced to cancel. We are going to bring in Sam Berkwin, who is the voice of Stark County. You guys all know Sam. Has had a great career here in Stark County. Sam is going to fill in next week for the Fox brothers, and so we should look forward to some good stuff from Sam as well. Talks about local stuff, a lot of the Cleveland area stuff as well. So looking forward to having Sam here with us. Brings me now to the introduction of our speaker. Alan Farst is an acclaimed American director, a filmmaker in the Directors Guild of America, Contour Getty photographer, whose most notable work is in action sports, music, documentary films, high-end commercials, and intimate celebrity photography. His work was featured by Panasonic, Maxim Magazine, USA Today, Drone 360, Nikon Cinema, Billboard, Bloomberg Newsweek, Yahoo Finance, Variety, and Fox Business News, amongst others. Guy's pretty busy. Alan currently released Triangle Park, which you're going to hear about and you see on the screen behind me there, a documentary film about the first ever NFL football game. The film is packed with beautiful cinematic reenactments, along with several stars participating, such as, and listen to this lineup, Troy Aikman, Eric Dickerson, Chris Collinsworth, Joe Buck, Larry Fitzgerald, Kirk Herbstreit, Susie Colbert, Tony Dungy, Cooper Kupp, Joe Theismann, and many, many more. So it's going to be interesting to hear about this as well. It's narrated by Michelle Tafoya. The film had several sellouts at theaters in Ohio this past fall, and even premiered at AMC theaters in all 32 NFL cities the night before Thanksgiving in 2023. Alan was added to the Directors Guild of America's Selection Committee for the 76th Annual DGA Awards for Best Documentary Film for this year in 2024. Let's give a big Pro Football Hall of Fame Luncheon Club welcome to our speaker today, Alan Farst.
All right, let's check this here. It's good to see everybody. First off, I just need a reading because I'm up in Canton. How many Ohio State fans do we have? Show of hands. How many Michigan fans? Okay, listen, I think we could take you up on the shredding of the thing you mentioned for the coach that just left in Michigan. I think he still has some shredding to get rid of, so I'm going to give you your number. Well, let's get moving on here. So, a lot of people ask, hey, what's it like being a director? I've been doing it really since I was a kid. My brother Brad and I grew up in a drugstore that my dad had. And I know a lot of you would remember back then there wasn't Walmart and big giant superstores, Myers and all these things like Costco. So you would go to a drugstore and you would actually have a catalog in there. It was kind of thick, and you could buy pretty much anything, right? But you had to order it. And so when we used to work there and ring out people and make change and all that stuff, you'd fan through when you weren't busy, and you'd be eyeing anything in the book, right? Well, there would always be this section in there, because we were sports guys, I was, and you know, in our family predominantly, but you know, you would sit there and I get fascinated by this 2 pages, and one side was still cameras and the other side was projectors and film cameras, 8 millimeters, right? And so finally I said to Dad one day, I said, I really want to get this camera. It's a still camera. And he said, okay. He goes, well, you keep coming in after work every day. And he goes, and you keep doing your thing, and we'll get a little vial and put it back on the shelf. And then we would stuff some ones in it every other day, right? And I think, as you know, Brad knows Dad pretty well, so I would say Dad probably cheated a little bit and filled that up a little quicker, because it felt like the camera didn't take that long to achieve. But I did get a Canton A1 way back in the day, and that started off with blowing up firecrackers and filming them. And that didn't go over well. So, but as time goes on, you know, you just keep moving forward with playing sports. I went to the University of Cincinnati, ran track there. And, but, you know, this was just always like a passion for me. You know, it was always something that I loved. I'd always make commercials, or I'd make music videos for girls I liked, or, you know, things like that. And then finally, you know, you realize, hey, this could be a profession. And so it just kind of worked its way in. So on the screen, you can see, like right now, like this is me shooting a commercial for Cessna. So like I'd go shoot a you know, pretty expensive commercial to sell $20 million jets, which isn't a bad job to have. You know, so and then I've worked with a lot of luxury brands over time. I was, you know, kind of quick to learn that that's where you could work with prettier models, and you know, you get more money. So you know, you can see that we work with everybody from golf companies like EasyGo, Callaway, you know, Four Seasons, things like that. And then, you know, big wide group of our partial client list that we've done through the years. So I got the chance to film at X Games several times. Brad was with me out there. We were there when Kenny Brack, a Swedish guy that was an Indy 500 driver, first year of rally racing, and we got to be there when he actually won the very first year of rally racing, and I was actually filming a documentary on Kenny at the time. So that was a, you know, pretty good ride. So through time, I had an endorsement with Panasonic for a long time. I think they kept me on their website maybe 15, 16 years. I started using a little small camera that was a pro consumer camera at the time, and it just happened to be that it goes on to be like one of the biggest selling cameras. It was called the Panasonic DVX100, and it kind of shot like 16:9 cinematic 24p, and that was a rarity for a pro consumer camera. So I then get asked later, I did films for Bobby Rahal and David Letterman at Indy, for their IndyCar team for 9 seasons. And then I kind of did a collaboration with Nikon, had a new camera coming out. It's called the Nikon D4S. And then first time you were really shooting high speed things with motion, it was one of their big cameras. So I had a chance to do that. And then you can see the Drone 360, and there's a picture of me in the Indianapolis Colts Stadium there. And that's about an $80,000 drone, which we call now, and at the time it was the largest drone that was in the United States, which we owned. And so we got asked to do Super Bowl footage. We got asked to fly in like the Pacers and the Colts. I can tell you though, when you have an $80,000 helicopter like that, and then you put on a $100,000 camera, and then they ask you to take to the top of the roof, and then maybe fly it outside the doors that open up at the Colts Stadium, or the wind and the atmosphere changes, your butt does pucker just a little bit. So I've always been chasing the Hollywood dream, because we live in Dayton, Ohio, and that's where we were born. We're real close to where the airport was. So we've always had a fascination with flying, you know. So it's in a lot of things that I do currently. I have a lot of aviation things, and there's a good look at it was called the Aragon at the time. They changed the name of this thing after we came out in the first ever Drone 360 magazine. So fast forward through a lot of years, a lot of commercials, a lot of hard work, a lot of travel, I started saying to myself, man, I want to get back into films. I want to make something that fills my love tank. A little long form, could be a feature film, could be a doc, but whatever it is, I'm telling myself before I go to bed every night, I'm saying, hey, it has to be really worthy of my time, right? Because as I'm getting older, I'm learning time is valuable. So I run into a friend of mine that I had produced a record with while I was shooting a commercial in Vegas. And I had one night off. I looked up on Polestar, which is where you see where the bands are playing, and I see this guy, Chuck Leavell, because I see that the Rolling Stones are playing in Las Vegas that night. And so I knew Chuck. He had played on a record of mine, and I asked him in a phone message, hey, I'm here in town, can I come to the show? He called me back 20 minutes later, and he said, yeah, I'm going to have you there. No, come on in. And so, lo and behold, he calls me back 20 minutes later, and he says, well, we're going to probably have to cancel the show. Mick has laryngitis. And you're sitting here thinking, I'm in Vegas. I can go to the Rolling Stone show, and Mick has laryngitis. That's like the biggest downer I probably could hear. And so, but he calls me back 20 minutes later and says, yeah, we're going to cancel the show. But it gave Chuck and I a chance to catch up. We talked for 20 minutes, and I started sending him some imagery of some things I had recently shot. And lo and behold, Chuck says, hey, have you ever thought about doing a documentary on me? And I thought, that's exactly what I've been telling myself for the last six to 8 weeks. And Chuck is probably one of the best piano players in the world, and he plays on all the hit records that you hear on rock radio, everything. He was in the Allman Brothers. Then he went to the Stones in '82. He plays with, travels around, does Pink Floyd. A lot of the hits you hear on radio are from him. Everything from the Black Crowes to Train. That's all Chuck. So I was in the Planet Hollywood hotel at the time, and I looked over, and they're all decorated in each room's got its own thing. Mine happened to be Bruce Lee. So I looked over at the wall, and I got Bruce Lee, looking back at me like this, and I got the tingles. You get the tingles sometimes when you're supposed to make something. And so I got the tingles, and I knew I was supposed to make something with Chuck. And you start thinking about Rolling Stones, Pink Floyd, Eric Clapton on the Unplugged record, right? That's all Chuck. So I said, I'm down on a knee, because you can't see me, we're on the phone. I said I want to do it. So a few weeks go by, I talked to he and his agent. I wanted to do a pitch deck, and I wanted to let them know what I would do, and I needed to know that they understood what I was going to be asking of them. And so lo and behold, we, in a quick time, signed up. I spent 3 years on the project, came out, won film festival awards, which is crazy when you win a film festival award, because there's usually like 170 to 200 films that are at this festival. And then we won the very first film festival we went to. And I was standing at the popcorn area at the concession stand, and I see this guy walking towards me. And I don't know how many of you remember Leonard Maltin, the film critic that was on TV, right? I see, I never forget, I have like a photo, almost recall memory. So I see this guy walking towards me, I'm like, that looks like Leonard Maltin. And he's walking towards me, and he's got a pass on like I do, but it's colored different. And he walks up, and I said, hey, Leonard. And he says, oh, hey. And I said, what are you doing here? And I said, what are you here to see? And he goes, I'm here to see The Tree Man. And our movie's called Chuck Leavell, The Tree Man. And I said, no, really, what are you here to see? And he goes, no, I'm here to see The Tree Man. And I said, that's my movie. And I'm, holding up my pass, And he goes, yeah. He goes, me and my wife, she's right behind you. So I turned around, Allison's her name, and I noticed she had kind of a bad hip. She's got every snack in the world. She's got popcorn, and things are falling all over. I said, listen, Leonard, I'm going to take you and Allison in. We're going to get you to pick out the seats you want. Let me carry all this crap for you. You just walk her in. I'm thinking half star here, I'm thinking 1 star. I'm going to get an upgrade. So anyways, they came in, watched the first film. that I'm showing in a theater, and he picks the very back row. Now that gave me no confidence. You know, I'm thinking, that's so he can leave and not be seen. But they play the movie, we get done, and they bring me down. The lady says, Alan, no matter what you do, you have to keep making movies. And I said, I guess that'll depend on the guy that's sitting in the back row, who's Leonard Maltin. And everybody's like, oh, Leonard's here. And they turned around and looked, and he was still there with his wife, which I thought was a good sign, you know, because they could have walked out. But they stayed through the whole entire Q&A, which was like 20 minutes, so which was great. So anyways, this is the poster for Chuck Leavell, The Tree Man. You can catch it on Amazon. It's out there. It's a great story. It's about a guy that's literally been, not just music, but he's also has a 5,000 acre tree farm. He's been married for, now 50 years. At the time we started, it was 47, 48. So anyways, and then I'll just give you a little bit of the teaser here. I'm not sure if you guys can hear these things.
Chuck Leavell is one of
You guys hear
the
that?
finest, most daring, classiest, brilliant, most colorful architects of the piano and other keyboards in the last 40 years.
Chuck was selected as the National Tree Farmer of the Year, and people just absolutely were attracted to Chuck.
He's just a human being that you think doesn't exist anymore.
One of the most soulful white musicians I ever came across.
Sitting in with the band right over there, Chuck Leavell, ladies and gentlemen.
For me, it's really a love story. Yeah, 46 years now we've been together. That girl's been mighty good to me.
It's amazing to me that he can live that kind of life and be in that kind of place.
But who you get to sing the other part in Comfortably Numb is always a problem. I'd say he's done it about the best.
The man's a gentleman. The man's a real man. You know, and I don't think I can say anything better about any guy in the world. You get me?
So I was in Copenhagen when that happened with Keith Richards, and he's literally like that. He walks down, he's got a pace to him with a cigarette. You could feel him going when he was going to go, and he had a vodka and this like lemonade, little small lemonade drink that they do in Europe. And so I got a pace down, and I knew. And so when I got to about 30 minutes in, I kind of knew he was probably at the end, but I'd kind of broken him down. And, you know, had I tried to interview him 20 years ago or at the beginning of my career, I would have more than likely stepped on that moment. You know what I mean? I would have that silence that I gave him in there to just live and breathe, let him go through and just be Keith Richards. I probably would have just kept talking, right? And I would have ruined it. But luckily, I was old and tired then when I did it. So, so our claim to fame is that the movie also went on the back of Delta in-flight. So you get like 200 million people that are flying on Delta a year, and this was the #1 documentary. It just came off about 6-7 months ago, and thankfully because the movie did so well, and the Stones are now going to go tour at 80, right? They're going to go on tour in April, and then go May, June, July. I think there's 16 dates, and they've asked to have the doc play again while they're on tour. So it's going to run from April through the end of the summer, which is, you know, a great honor. So it will technically probably be the official long-term doc of all time, because I doubt they go back and ask too many people for that that concession, I guess. Well, okay, so let's get to what we're here for. Let's talk about football. All right. So I grew up in Van Dyke, played football from 4th grade through 12th grade. I was a quarterback. And I love football, had a big passion for it, you know. And it was one of those things, you know, you just kind of, you just, once you get into it, you know, I mean, I'm sure, how many guys in here play football? Show of hands. I mean, yeah. So, you know, it gets in your soul, right? And I just loved it. I love, figuring out the scheme of things. I love going to practice as much as I love the games. And so, I'm coming through the Chuck Lavelle project, and I'm saying to myself, gosh, what am I going to do next? What's going to fill my love tank? Because when you leave the Stones, everything looks like a cliff, right? It's like nothing. Where are you going after that? I've been staying in 5-star hotels for 3 years, which is unusual for a documentary, right? So I say to myself, well, I also have 3 kids, and I said, what could keep me at home maybe for a minute? Because I spent probably 2 months, or I probably spent 2 weeks out of every month on the road to film. So, it'd be LA, Copenhagen, Paris, London, I was always bouncing around. So, in Dayton, you really have 2 stories. One could be the Wright brothers. That would be the obvious, right? But that was going to be a feature film in my mind. And it probably needed $30 million minimum, if not 50, to probably achieve it. So the other one is we had this loose story about the first ever game. We had this plaque that was down at the Triangle Park, and it had been anointed by the NFL. I don't know how many of you know that, but so if you start to think and you're trying to peel back a story so that you can fill up 90 minutes of something that's going to entertain people, right? You're looking to find aha moments. And so I started calling our local paper guys. I started calling guys that have like these websites about the Dayton Triangles, and I started asking, could I talk to some of the descendants? And then I got to some of the descendants, and then I would ask the descendants, hey, do you have something that no one has really seen yet? Because no one's ever done a story ever on this subject. And they were all like, yeah, we do have something. We have, maybe it's a metal stadium ball. Maybe it was a little necklace charm that they all got in 1920. There was all these things that we were able to cover over time. It was not easy to get to all the family members. I had to go in the press a lot, because when I'd go in the press and talk about, that I'm going to do it, or I'm filming something new, it's like shaking a tree, and you kind of wait for some of the squirrel nuts to fall down, and they may email you, contact you, whatnot, right? So that's how it was. Well, at the early stages, I'm even calling the Pro Football Hall of Fame up here, because I knew George Veras, and George Veras was the head of production guy, an older guy here, had been, I think George was probably here 10 or 11 years, is that right? I think he's over 10. But he was from Cleveland, and he had produced a lot of the NFL games. And when I was just starting to make stuff kind of professionally, somehow I got turned on to him because he was the guy that broke Yanni on PBS. And so I think we were looking to figure a way to take some of the bands I had, and somehow I got turned on to him. But anyways, George ends up asking me, hey, do you want to come film the Winter Olympics? And we grew up skiing, Brad and I. So I was like, yeah, I'm coming. And then you find out the schedule was really long, and I was already working, and I couldn't make that work. So I didn't see George for like 20 years after that. But when I knew he was at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, so I called him and I said, hey, I'm looking to do this project. And that's when George says, hey, we want to do this. We want to support you. We want to help you achieve what you want to do with this. And they let me use their logo and some things that would normally cost a pretty good penny. But they were just very gracious throughout the whole process. So I definitely want to thank them. And also, we can get into it, but obviously John Jacob and everybody at Bender's, for us to film there and make stuff there was for us like the Holy Grail, because that's really where it all happened. So John wouldn't return our call for like literally about a year, so we won't hold that against him either. But he thought we were more like kids with a camcorder, and we were like, no, we're not. So this is really one of the advertisements that we have. You can just see, like, I try to bring a lot of star power to stuff because it gets you the eyeballs, right? Just like in Chuck's film, we had every celebrity you could want in rock and roll, right? So this had to be the same thing. It had to be, if I'm doing something from Dayton and I want to draw attention to this game between the Dayton Triangles and the Columbus Panhandles, I need star power. And luckily, I've always just been able to somehow, get that from above. It just kind of just happens. I don't know how we do it, but so I reached out first to Michelle Tafoya, and I asked her would she be willing to narrate it. We needed somebody that had a lot of credibility with football. We needed a woman to narrate it, in my opinion, because in 1920, you have some things that are orbiting around the NFL, one of which is it's the women's right to vote, right? The 19th Amendment. And that was a big deal. And so to have her be a softer voice for us who could talk about that inside the film was great. And then also there's other people that we're trying to include. And when you're looking for a lot of the reasons why I'm making the film, it's for the love of the game. I'm making this because I love football. That was really, it wasn't about money, it wasn't about anything other than I wanted to pay it forward for the next guy, because if we don't make something like this now, in another 5 or 10 years, the people aren't around to tell the stories. And you're too far down into the people that you're going into the 4th and 5th generations who don't know the stories as well, nor do some of them even care, to be honest, because it's so far removed from them. So anyways, that's how we kind of came together, and just like Chuck did, where he opens up the black book and brings us into all these rock stars, I knew probably 30 to 35% of the people in the film that we got. And then Michelle was able to open up the black book and bring, the Troy Aikmans, the Eric Dickerson, people like that. And so anyways, this is actually the only photograph of the team in 1920 of the Dayton Triangles, and the Columbus Panhandles didn't even have a team photo that year, so we have nothing to show you for them. But we colored this up from a black and white, but you can see if you look at the guy that's right in the middle, the very center, that was our captain, Al Mart. He was a big guy, he was 6'1", kind of rare for a lot of those guys. The guy to his right is going to be Lou Partlow, the dark-haired guy there. He's the guy that scores the first ever touchdown in the NFL. It's a run off the right side. And then the guy to the left of the captain, Al Mart, that's sitting there kind of little lower in there, that's Hobby Kennerdime. He scores the first 2 extra points after those scores. So you'll have to watch the film to find out how we get the second score, because we won 14-0. All right, this is the actual night. You guys have some great assets up here, right? You have some great assets at the Hall of Fame. This is the biggest asset that's out there that you guys should be encouraged to come down to Dayton, Ohio, and take a day trip and come down to the Carillon Historical Park. And they moved this original locker room there. You can walk in, you can check it out. You can definitely feel the vibes of football players in there when you go in. And they moved, I think it cost like $100,000 to move this thing here. So it's really cool, and I definitely encourage you to do it. And we filmed scenes in there as well for the movie. Again, For the Love of the Game was always my mojo. How do we film things? This is always a question. Okay, so we really use, for when I'm doing stuff, it's all basically Hollywood gear. So we own everything. So we use these special cars they get rigged out, and stabilization stuff are added where the camera's at. And it takes like 4 of us to really pull these kind of shoots off, sometimes up to 6. And it helps that you can have a $300,000 Packard car sitting right behind you on loan. And then that girl that's like super pretty that you see right through there with the curly hair, yeah, that's my daughter. So it's a documentary, so you have to find really cheap labor. And so we try to maximize the money. By the way, her 2 brothers are in this movie as well, so that's how we had to go deep. I really like to get the community involvement with things too. So when comes time to promote something, I really try to activate through brands and through businesses that are making quality stuff. So Killer Brownie is a family-owned business. It kind of spun out of our Dorothy Lane Markets, It's now the biggest brownie company in the world, and they make tons of these things, and they ship them all over the world every day. So I approached them and said, hey, could we take that picture that we showed you, what was colored up, can we give that to you, and could we put killer brownies in there? So we took them to all of the premieres, and we even had some here in Canton at the Plaza. They go quick, because people would come out, and half the people take two, and then the people that were late coming out didn't get them. But they've been a great partner, and then they put you into all the grocery stores with these big, huge displays. And then on the right side, lower right, is a Warp Wing, which is a local brewery for us. It actually ships quite a bit around the state now. And we developed a can, and then that just blew right out. I mean, they had them in the grocery stores, and they went quick. So very cool to have them. And I also, took me a while, but I finally got a deal that I was able to work out with Wilson, that we have our own gold ball. And if you look closely to the right side of the object there, the ball, they came up with a good idea that I would actually replace Roger Goodell, the commissioner's signature, with my own. I thought it was pretty cool. So I did warn my family members and my wife that we would need a bigger door at our house to get my head through it, because I actually now have my own gold ball. So, I kind of weird you carry that around for at least the first month with everybody. So there it is, you can see it. We put the Hall of Fame, came up, they had this nice cool monochrome look to it, so we added that to it. So yeah, it's a great ball. We sell it on triangleparkmovie.com, which we can get to, but these balls won't be around forever, but they're cool, and they definitely look cooler in person. Another reason why you bring somebody like Michelle Tafoya to your project is because she's on Fox all the time. I'm not a super political person, but she can bring 3, 4, 5 million people on whatever show she has. It's like Chuck being on tour with the Stones. They can draw a lot of energy to watch the film, and so there you go. This was the very first night. Over 300 people, go to the plaza, our plaza in Miamisburg, Ohio, which was built right in 1919, the year before the game, and it's an old school theater, and it was fun. And I brought in Chuck Lavelle in there to play. And there's Chuck there. You can see he looks like the Santa Claus guy. That's my family. So you can see the other two actors there, left and right, and my wife, who has to put up with me. So there you go. But that's us there, opening night, and Chuck ended up playing "Start Me Up," which was nice, and then he played the theme song, because what he does do is he does all of the music, everything you're going to hear in the movie, all the score, everything is all Chuck Lavelle, and recorded down at Capricorn Studios, which is where all the big hits were made with the Allman Brothers. And it's as good a score as you're going to hear anywhere. So this is kind of fun. You can see everybody's wearing our t-shirts and stuff, and it's great to do film premieres. They're exciting. People get to watch your work. You've worked hard 3 years on this one as well. So I'm back to back making films for 6 years, and I'm going to flip that over coming up to where I'm just doing feature films. So since I went in the Directors Guild, and now I got through this one, I've got another film that we're working on. We're going to try to film this coming fall, and then after that, and we're in the process, there's kind of like two of these things going on at once. At a date, and I mentioned that nobody's ever done a film on the Wright brothers, and you got the 125th anniversary of Flights coming up, right? And think about it, all the war movies, think about the rugby team that got stuck in the Andes. There's several movies on some of these subject matters, not one movie about the Wright brothers. Isn't that crazy? So I'm going to tackle that. So I'm looking for 50 million, step forward if you have it. Let's go ahead. I'll play you the. I'll go ahead and play you the. This is the trailer, kind of what we gave to Amazon. Or no, this would have gone to AMC theaters. So hang on.
Boys, to the future of the NFL. Yeah!
We just won the game.
Game, Lou.
2-2, Norb.
Anybody have a whistle?
Yeah, I've got a whistle. Me and Esther's work on the Pennsylvania Railroad, and we always have a whistle with us. You're welcome to use it.
Not today, mister.
The National Football League's history follows the same path as America's society.
Which is more fascinating, Norb? Football or women having the right to vote?
For these millions of fans who love the NFL, they should want to know where it started.
What do you think about a guy like Lou Partlow, who played football? Didn't play it for the money. You know, you played because, you know, it was something new, something you loved. Scoring a touchdown is big. I mean, I'm telling you. And think about scoring the very first touchdown. That's even bigger.
Lou Partlow had it figured out. He was going to scare the players on the other team because he was known for tackling trees.
If you're a football fan anywhere in the country and you love the history and the tradition of the NFL, you're going to want to watch this film, Triangle Park.
The National Football League's history follows the same path as America's society.
You know, why do we not know more about the very first game played? But it had to start somewhere, and it started right there.
The love of the game is about the people and being the greatest team sport that there is.
I think the NFL has gotten to a point where it's become the sport that America follows. To be able to push back and go back to the grassroots of really understanding where it all got started is fascinating to me.
There's only one first game.
So that's what 3 years looks like. So, you know, it was a real honor to work on it, especially when you see the tears in the eyes of the family members and wanting to, you know, when I first talked to them, they had misty eyes, but when we did the premieres and stuff and we were looking around at some of them, man, just, you know, waterworks. So it definitely was an honor to work on it. And I feel like that, you know, as you would watch this film, you're going to see a lot more talking heads in it, talking about things about their love of the game, or maybe it's Ben Roethlisberger talking about passing the football with his dad in the backyard, things like that. You're going to hear there's a lot more interesting comments, because when we watch, you know, ESPN, Sports Centers, and these things, a lot of it's just game of the week, right? It's they don't really get into the weeds of things they did with their family, because that's not what they're talking about. So that's what this film was designed to do. It was designed to slow all that down and really focus on the love of the game stuff. And I think you'll find some surprising stories, like Susie Colbert. You know, she was really the first girl in the United States to attempt to play Pee Wee football. And we've all known Susie as a sideline reporter and been on X Games, ESPN, did, you know, Monday Night Football. And to hear her version and see what footage we have from her, you know, is, you know, it just stops you. It makes you think about the love of the game a lot. So I would probably say in the long run here, you know, there's, before we get into the Q&A, which we can start any second, but, you know, the nice thing is that I encourage people, if you want to be a part of history, right, you know, we're always, because we're a documentary, we're like the little engine that could. So we are going to Amazon. Amazon's probably about 60 days away from our launch, but we are always looking for any additional funds, because we do struggle to get money, believe it or not. So if that would be something anybody would be willing to do, big or small, or, you know, you can call us with a large check or a small, it doesn't matter. But it all goes towards the basically promotion of the film that it will be on Amazon. So the important thing is, and the way I looked at it is that, you know, football started here in Ohio, right? And you guys were a big part of it. Dayton was a big part of it. And Columbus was a traveling team, right? So they don't have a lot of stuff there. But we have a responsibility to educate others on what we have. And, and for my town, when you look at it, I say, hey, I'm kind of 39 years removed from high school. That seems weird to say, 39 years. But when you think about it, that means every little town, every little city that we have, could be Beaver Creek, Trotwood, Vandalia, Bellbrook, Centerville, Kettering, all of those kids that have come through all of those schools, they don't know anything about this. They don't know the story. They don't know the history of football. They don't know where it started. And your story with Canton is in this film, right? So it's in there. It's what did the guys do? How did that look like? You saw the toast in there. Of course, we changed it to the NFL to make it a little easier for them to understand the audience. But they get to see things that that really haven't been seen ever. When you see some of those necklaces and the stadium balls and some of the things that the family have, it's worth the $10 to see it if you're a football fan, because no one's really seen this stuff at all. The families, don't even pull it out. It's been like in a war chest. And so us bringing it forward like that. And there's only, when you see the necklace in the movie, which is very cool to see it because it's got a football on it, it's gold, it's got a lot of detail, but there's only 2 in existence. So one we filmed with, which is Hobby Kenderdine's, which was he was the center, and back then he also was the kicker. So, but we have his, and it feels good. Also, we have Carl Stork, who was our manager. He has all the original minutes from August 20th that were transferred on onion skin. So when we got to hold that up to film with it, take pictures with it, talk about getting the goosebumps, because about 12 people have ever held that document, right? Because he kept it in, his family has it, and it's only gone a couple generations past, and here this document was. So it was pretty special stuff. So anyway, I know there's gonna be some questions. Let's go. You ready? Who's got one for me? Yes, sir.
Was the date August 20th, 1920 then?
Well, that was the first time that everybody came up. You had like 4 different teams that showed up. And then what ends up happening, I would think that it was probably like, hey, we're going to have Jim Thorpe kind of be the figurehead so we have some credibility, right? And then they come back, because they only had 4, they needed more teams. Then they come back on September 17th, and that's when all of a sudden, now you got a lot more teams showed up, and everybody started catching wind that we were going to do this, right? And then there was a couple other teams that get added in, and one didn't play, but they got added in onto the fact that they were in on those original teams. My personal opinion is on the reason why pro football stuck out of all that, right, is really Joe Carr. Joe Carr from the Columbus Panhandles, in my opinion, from everything and all the interviews and all the history, there were really two things that he did, right? The one is that you could not cherry pick college players to come from Notre Dame or Ohio State and stack your team on a Sunday. Okay, that was the first thing. And then they were going to fine or pull your permit, if you did, and they were hardcore about it. The other one is that he understood that baseball was the #1 sport, and it was very successful, and they were all in the big markets. So unfortunately, guys like us in Dayton and Canton, these teams all get pulled, but they're going to the big markets where all the money's at. The people are there, the seats are there, the sponsors are there. It was just an easier way to do business. And I think, but those 2 reasons are really the reasons why the NFL is still around, in my opinion. Yeah. Yes?
So with Dayton hosting the first game, did Dayton actually also compete and apply to be the site for the Pro Football Hall of Fame?
Well, you guys were smarter than us. Thank you. I say this all the time. I said, guys, we need to do something in Dayton because they've outdone us in Canton because they had the forethought to do it. But you guys had people here that understood the collection of things, and you also had Leo Lyons, which was from the Jefferson team, and he had a lot of stuff, and he's the one that lobbied to have it. And I think it was logical that they would come here because it was where the league was formed. So I think that had a lot of merit. I mean, Dayton obviously had the first game, but it took us 103, well, it took us 100 years to figure it out that we were the first game. So there's a special guy that's out there, okay? This guy's name is Steve Priester. Steve Priester didn't live in Dayton, but he moved there. And when he moved there, he was early 30s, and he said, I want to see some sights around Dayton. He was doing like this report for his work, and he comes up to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Well, back then it was hardly anything, and he came up here, and this was like 35 years ago. He came up here and he saw over in this little small corner, there was this mention about the Dayton Trials. Not that they were the first game, obviously, because really nobody knew. So he sees that. He then comes back to Dayton and he starts looking up at the Cox Media, where the newspaper was, Dayton Daily News, and he starts going in the basement, he starts looking through all the fish film. And then he's looking at the day after the games and he's trying to find and connect the dots. Well, after several months of this, he finally figures out this must be really close to when maybe a first game was played. And so then he started to go down that path, and then he went to the NFL, and that's when they all agreed that it was the first ever NFL football game. There was another game that was played that day in a different time zone, so it would have been played later, but it was also a game that ended in a forfeiture, and so that probably didn't sound as good as a completed game 14-0. But I will say is that, Steve did such a great job, and you'll see him in the film. And life is a funny thing, as you get older, because we filmed with Steve in late November. He was I'm not going to do it, I don't want to be on camera. And I go, Steve, you're why we're here. We wouldn't be doing this project without you. Please come on and do this. So he agreed, he comes on, he films with us late November. 2 weeks later, he finds out he has cancer. Never even knew it. And then he died in mid-January. And so, but I think about things and purpose, right? And what is that guy's purpose? And, I think it was to tell this story, He spent his whole life on it. He's the one that helped us get our plaque that's down there where Triangle Park is. So, it seems to me that, you just something to look at when you watch the film, because he'll be in there, you'll hear him. He's an interesting guy. Yeah. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Where do you have access to the film? Where can we watch it? Is it not Hulu?
Well, it'll be coming out on Amazon. I was telling Frank that we'll get you a link when we know it's going to go live. So in the next, 6 to 8 weeks, they'll probably give us that. And then we'll let you guys, he can mass email you guys, I guess is what I was told. So we'll give you a link, and then you guys can go watch it and support it, and hopefully leave us a good review. Yeah.
Maybe I'm naive, but I'd never heard of this game before. My question is, what's your affiliation with the Pro Football Hall of Fame?
Well, I really have none, to be honest. I was hoping they'd give me a gold jacket after this. They're harder to get because Joe Buck got one, but not really. You know what I mean? Like, he's in there, but he doesn't get the gold jacket. So I thought I stand no chance in hell to get that gold jacket. Well, yeah, they put it on their website, and Rich and those guys over there have kindly done that follow-up because George Veras has left the organization, and so they did a great follow-up, and I think their plans are to continue to help us be a marketing arm. You have to remember that if you look, well, something for you to look into is, okay, we had a guy that was on our team named Norb Sackstetter. Now, you probably might know him because he did come up and play on your team here in 22 when you guys won the championship. So he was one of the best players in the era. The reason why he's probably not in the Hall of Fame, okay, is because he didn't stick with one team. If he got paid $50 more, he was going to the next team. He was going somewhere else. But his family, and you'll see them in the film, they've gone back painstakingly to every place he's ever played, looked at the stats, and when you look at him, and this guy's played in 60 football games, and you're scoring as many touchdowns as he's scoring, he's basically averaging a touchdown a game, which is the equivalent of what Eric Dickerson was doing in the NFL. And Norb Sacksteder should be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and you'll hear that from some of the people, those big names that you saw on the poster, are going to talk about it, and they're going to talk about some of the stats. I mentioned Eric Dickerson. He was the one of the first guys that I wanted from Michelle, because she asked me, she says, who do you want me to get that you want to put in this movie? I said, Eric Dickerson. And she goes, why in the world do you want Eric Dickerson? She's like, he's from out west, he's from Texas, he played for the Rams. She said, didn't know any connection. And I said, well, he was my favorite player when I was a kid. And selfishly, I want to meet him. And so in 1984, I was 14. And in Dayton, I don't know what you had here, but in Dayton, the 4 o'clock games, because remember that was when you had to get up and go turn the TV, right? All right, so maybe you had a 3-clicker, I don't know. But for us, we had to get up and turn it. The late games at 4 o'clock were SMU for college, right? And then, I started seeing Dickerson on the SMU games. I'm like, man, this guy's bad at the bone. He's awesome. And then, you start getting into the Pony Express and some of those things. So then he goes to the Rams. 4 o'clock game in Dayton, Ohio is the Los Angeles Rams. So I said, there's my guy again. So I was like following him like Michael Jordan, And I love this guy. So the first year he went 1808, and then the second year he breaks the record 2105, single season rushing record. I followed almost all those games at that time when he did that. So I got to Eric's house. Well, let me back up. She had me on the phone with him 48 hours later. And I had this call set up, so I texted him on his cell phone before I called. I had saved 4 things from the Rams when I was in high school. One of which was the full-page ad that was in the USA Today after he broke the record. And it says at the bottom of it, it says, we couldn't have run a better ad than Eric Dickerson ran for us, Adidas. And I thought, dude, that's worth keeping. So I kept it for 39 years, And not knowing that I pull it out, and right before we talked 10 minutes, I took a picture of it and I texted to him and I said, hey, just to let you know what you're getting yourself into here, And so Dickerson got on the phone, we hit it off, and he knew I was crazy. It didn't take long. So I said, before we get into anything, I go, what was your 40 time? I could never figure that out. 4.4. I'm fast tracking this for you guys. 4.4. I said, oh, really? I said, yeah. So we talked about stuff. So then when I finally got to his house and we started talking about I asked him about the Pony Express and about, hey, what was that like back in the day? I said, is that really when they would drop off the bags of cash? And he says, oh, yeah. He goes, that was, 50,000, 80,000 just being a duffel bag, And, so he kind of painted a picture for me about what it was like in that era. But Dickerson, as you saw in the trailer, what a great guy. I have to tee him up a little bit about history, but the fact that he was willing to say those things about what it must have been like to score a first touchdown, and you get more of that in the game. These players are going to talk to you about their favorite number. I was a numbers guy. So I loved what was your jersey number and why, So some of these guys are going to talk to you about that. Like that's all part of for the love of the game, right? So there'll be things like that in there. So yeah. Frank, how are we doing? We got one more. We got 1 minute left. Yes.
The first 13 years there was not a championship game. Are you considering a documentary on the first championship game?
Well, it's not that I wouldn't consider doing a documentary. I mean, it's for me with this film. I had 2 carts in front of the horse, meaning that the money was a struggle to get in, which I didn't think it was going to be. I thought with the Rolling Stones and then coming to this, I thought the towns would support it more, and that's been a real struggle. So for me, I always feel like if the budget's there and we can make something that would be awesome and the story's there, I would entertain it. I like sports, but I also think in the long run, you really have to have a great script or story. And it took me a year to develop that out on this project, because I was always hoping I would have more, and I kept getting more. But the budgets are the key, because, all the people working for you, they're not working for free, I feel like I do, but, yeah. No. Hey, I want to just say thank you to everyone today for coming. It's a great group.